All right, in the meantime here, we're going to transition not too far from the Israel-Hamas conflict now to talks, negotiations ongoing between the United States and Iran. The United States putting a nuclear deal on the table. I want to put up this tweet from Axios' Barak Ravid. He's a great reporter, and I'm going to read from his piece published just today. He reports this, quote, "The nuclear deal proposal the U.S. gave Iran Saturday would allow limited low-level uranium enrichment on Iranian soil for a to-be-determined period of time." That's according to Axios' reporting that they said contradicted public statements from top officials. They say, why does it matter? The White House envoy Steve Witkoff and Secretary of State Marco Rubio have said publicly that the United States will not allow Iran to enrich uranium and will demand the full dismantlement of Iran's nuclear facilities. The secret proposal shows far more flexibility on both points. Now, Iran has consistently said it won't sign any deal that bans enrichment for civilian purposes, a red line that is irreconcilable with the U.S. public posture. But the proposal described to Axios by two sources with direct knowledge, one of whom provided a point-by-point breakdown, would seem to offer a clear path to a deal. By making this offer, Ravid reports, the Trump administration is risking backlash from its allies on the Hill and in Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu's government and dozens of Republican senators have pushed the administration to maintain red lines on zero nuclear enrichment and the full dismantlement of Iran's nuclear program. Well, the White House did not deny any of the details of the proposal described to Axios, but President Trump weighed in on this very piece that I'm reading from, saying this: the AUTOPEN should have stopped Iran a long time ago from enriching. Under our potential agreement, we will not allow any enrichment of uranium. So, what is true, what is not here? Let's bring into the conversation our friend there at UCLA, Benjamin Radd. He joins me. Benjamin, so good of you to be with us. It's been a while, but a lot has happened in the U.S.-Iranian space. They're talking to each other. You know that here. But contradictory reports in this piece in Axios, I want to read it again, that the proposal the United States put on the table for Iran would allow limited low-level uranium enrichment, rather. President Trump is saying that's not the case here. What more do we know? And Benjamin, I think you might be muted there.
Okay, sorry about that. We do seem to have some conflicting messages here. And in the past, this has been something that President Trump has used as part of his negotiation tactics. We've seen it especially in his social media posts with regards to the Russia-Ukraine conflict, where we'll see the administration behind the scenes, or at least through its diplomats and through its emissaries, take one position and negotiate on that basis, and then have him on Truth Social post something else entirely. And it is part of what he does to negotiate. It is meant to demonstrate to Iran that there is a line for the United States. But I'm not convinced that this no enrichment position is the ultimate red line. I think the administration has acknowledged that in order to get the kind of deal that it wants, providing Iran with access to a degree of enriched uranium, something well below the 20% threshold, which above which you have weaponization, below that it can be used for civilian purposes, especially for energy. That's something that would be viable. And monitor it. How do you prevent it from going further? How do you prevent it from being abused, enriched beyond those thresholds? The logistical challenge is not so much whether any enrichment can happen, but whether you can confine it to a degree that is safe.
But I have to ask, I mean, to the outside observer, is Iran really serious about the civilian uses of nuclear energy, or is that some type of facade?
That's a great question, and it remains a big unknown. Now, it's publicly taken the position that nuclear weapons are against the Islamic Republic's constitution, against the words of its founding leader, Ayatollah Khomeini. And what Iran wants more than anything is sanctions relief above and beyond nuclear enrichment. It needs the sanctions relief. It needs it to revitalize its economy, to satisfy the critics at home, to really prevent any opposition forming, the likes of which we've seen over the last few years or so. And whether or not they actually want to pursue a weapon, I believe there are hardliners that do. They see it as leveraged against an unpredictable, unstable world. They live in a part of the world where threats are made against them and they themselves make threats. And so they see having nuclear weapons as nothing more than a tool in its arsenal, something that other countries do. Do they want it? Yes. Are they willing to forego sanctions relief forever to get it? I don't think so.
Okay, but the president and others in his orbit, they've already set the red line that Iran's not going to get any nuclear weapons, that we're going to dismantle their nuclear weapons enrichment program here. So yes, to your point, it does seem like contradictions abound here in these statements, in these stories. But I have to ask, if the proposal would allow limited low-level uranium enrichments, isn't that the same thing as the JCPOA kind of brokered by former President Barack Obama at the time, the same Iranian nuclear deal that Donald Trump pulled out of in 2017? Isn't this just a carbon copy of that?
The irony is that we're getting very close to what that deal was. And I think that it's difficult to see where there is a whole lot of difference. Now, the deal that's been leaked, the one that Witkoff is negotiating that's proposed, does have some language in there about dismantling existing facilities that are subterranean and putting other restrictions. But really, by and large, it's very similar to the JCPOA, the 2015 deal. And what remains to be seen is, are there going to be any restrictions on Iran's ballistic missile program? Because that was a key part of this, right? Yeah. If Iran is developing a ballistic missile program, one that is meant to build missiles that can be equipped with a nuclear warhead, why do so if you have no intention of building a nuclear weapon? That was an issue in 2015 that wasn't sufficiently addressed, and this is a chance Trump has to take those types of missiles off the table completely.
Yeah, I just feel like we're kind of through the looking glass here. We're in some sort of deja vu. Now, under the proposal, Axios is reporting Iran would not be allowed to build any new enrichment facilities and must, quote, dismantle critical infrastructure for conversion and processing of uranium. The proposal also states Iran would have to halt new research and development on centrifuges. One of the key issues in enforcing any deal that is in the future agreed to is to get international inspectors on the ground inside Iran to make sure they're complying. That's always been an issue with this. Is that going to be part of the deal that's put on the table?
Well, it has to be. It's the only way to ensure compliance, like you said, whether it's having security cameras at specific installations or allowing for periodic inspections or spot inspections called upon at sort of a, with very short notice. The issue is going to be, how do you inspect places you don't know about, the unknown unknowns, to borrow something that Donald Rumsfeld said many years ago. That becomes a challenge. And secondly, the previous deal at least had the buy-in of the Chinese and the Russians. This one does not. Why is that important? Because it provides other safeguard mechanisms. It provides other allies in the negotiations who can help with intelligence, help with detecting any possible breaches and violations. In this instance now, the U.S. is pretty much going at it alone without those allies in place, without the EU+3 in place, the EU3, I should say, making it difficult to see how it can ensure compliance in the ways that you just mentioned.
So, Benjamin, I have to ask, this is more, I guess, of a political question. Donald Trump campaigned on being an Iran hawk, that they were going to put maximum pressure if he won the White House. He did. And there are some in his orbit in the national security and foreign policy space that you could make the argument that are not as hawkish toward Iran. I don't want to call them dovish by any means, but not as hawkish as some in his orbit here. Do you see this, or do people watching this, the political angle of it, see this as a capitulation to what then candidate Trump said on the campaign trail, that this is not maximum pressure, this is low to mild pressure?
So Trump take two positions. Number one, that Iran will not be allowed to have nuclear weapons under his watch, under his second term, but also at the same time that the U.S. would not engage or enter into any new Middle East wars or wars that are already existing. And so therein lies the challenge. How do you put that pressure on Iran, whether it's moderate, minimalist, or maximalist, without backing it up with a viable, credible threat of force? Now, you might think that that credible threat of force is there. The U.S. has made it. But again, we've heard Trump equally say he does not want the United States entangled in any more conflicts in the area, and he keeps it to a bare minimum. Things such as, for example, strikes against the Houthis, that kind of thing that we saw. So that becomes the box that he's put himself in, is how do you, on one hand, maintain that sort of campaign position of making sure Iran does not reach that threshold, but also the other campaign promise of not getting the U.S. entangled into foreign conflicts, especially in the Middle East.
Yeah, I guess if you had asked me 6 months ago after the election whether or not President Trump would engage in direct talks with the Iranians, I would have taken that bet that he would not have, because remember, lest we forget, the Iranians were trying to assassinate him all last year. There were plots unfolded and divulged. People were prosecuted, or at least indicted. Some of them are in Iran right now, and they can't be brought here. But those were very active threats against then-candidate Trump. But to say that, say nothing comes of this, of these talks, of this deal on the table, can the U.S. walk away with credibility?
The U.S. has done so, I should say, walked away, we've seen from the Ukraine-Russia negotiations when President Trump did not get the preconditions that he was looking for, when he didn't get the promises or the pledges he wanted. And so the idea here is basically you talk to anybody, talk to everybody, which is Trump's position, regardless of where they were with regards to the U.S. a year ago, whether or not they try to assassinate him, whether or not they've wished ill upon him. The idea is that he believes he can make a deal. He alone can do deals, and the only way to do that is to reach and talk directly to enemies and those who otherwise would not talk to you. Now, again, the challenge here, it's just like the sort of tariff negotiations, right? It's difficult to see what his actual positions are versus what is, bluster and trying to set the table stakes in the negotiating stage. There isn't a whole lot to back up and for us to look at and say he's actually carried out threats that he's made against adversaries, against those when he's negotiating. It's always been this sort of last-minute capitulation or walking away. Yeah. And it's difficult to see this going any other way than we've seen in the past. So with that, I would agree with your assessment.
Okay, and lastly here, if you're in the Iranian theocratic infrastructure, what's more important to you, getting a nuclear weapon or getting all U.S. sanctions relieved?
The primary goal of the regime is survival, and it cannot maintain a trajectory of survival given the current sanctioned state that it's under. It is absolutely debilitating, destabilizing its economy and its own political system. It's causing not just infighting, but also potential for uprising from within, let alone from other groups outside of the theocracy. And so if its primary goal is survival of the revolution, which is one of its core tenets, then whatever it can do to ensure that, which means getting sanctions relief and helping to rebuild the country and stabilize it, would have to come before nuclear weapons. However, this is where how the Israelis respond and what they do afterwards would also matter, because we've seen Netanyahu signal he is willing to go out alone if he needs to, and wants to take advantage of this window that he has. So therein lies the issue. To the extent that Iran wants to survive, yes, it does, but at the same time, it cannot back down from potential threats from others in the region. So it does find itself in this conundrum.
All right, Benjamin Radd, as always, can't thank you enough. Such valuable insights into this part of the world. We'll talk soon.